Joining me right now is the Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Rob Davies. So, for your time, I thank you. Let's begin with your roots as a trade unionist. Is this a budget that is pro-poor?
Well, I think it's a budget that has had to be adopted in very, very difficult financial circumstances, fiscal circumstances. They were outlined in considerable detail and frankness by the Minister in October last year. But I think that a number of the interventions that are there are intended to be exactly that. So first of all, the big new spending is on higher education and training, particularly greater access to the poor. This is extremely timely because we are in the midst of this thing called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It means that the premium is on people who have got skills and post-school education. And if you don't have it, it's much harder to get into any kind of productive activity, be a worker at a factory, in many of the service sectors, and even to be an entrepreneur. So I think that all of that is positive. And then there were a number of policy tools around industrialization that will continue to be funded even though the budget is tight.
Minister, part of South Africa's problem is not, of course, the policies and the plans which have been there. It's been really the implementation for the tar to meet the rubber and for something to get going here. Did he push the envelope enough with regards to manufacturing? Is there enough incentives to make manufacturers come here and create the much-needed jobs?
Well, I think that there are the incentives in place. Of course, if we had more, we could do more. But I think what's also very, very important was that he talked about the procurement rules and greater consequence management. This has been something that's been very close to our heart because localization has been a decision of government translated in a number of cases into practice notes by National Treasury and then flouted by a number of public entities who have not respected those, and very often contracts and tenders which have been problematic in the context of corruption, state capture, many of those have actually been for the procurement of imports rather than locally manufactured products. So I think that the way he announced that they're going to tighten up, we're already working with the Auditor General to tighten up as well. I think that could make that policy tool a lot more effective. It's not on the budget, but it's a policy tool that we can deploy and need to deploy, so we have a much stronger purchase of locally manufactured products.
He also spoke about 100 billion rand that's been allocated towards the Black Industrialist program. We've been hearing a lot about that program. Is the program well and ready to actually deliver not just on the number of black industrialists, but on the beneficiaries of such businesses?
Well, I wish he had said 100 billion. He didn't say anything like that. But what we have done in terms of the incentive program we run by the GTI, which by the way has been completely reprioritization, we haven't got any additional funding for it, is we have at this point in time we've supported 72 black industrialists, and we will be reaching the target of 100 by the end of this financial year. I'm convinced of that. What we will have to be doing now is to set ourselves a new target, which will allow new entrants, but also to look at some of those existing ones and how do we take them yet a step further forward so that they become not just small players, but they actually become much more significant members of our industrial family. So I think that's something that we'll be looking at in the future. And of course, he did identify the importance of the Black Industrialist Program.
Minister, part of South Africa's problem has been creation of jobs. For far too long, we've been saying the same mantra, jobs, jobs, jobs. How is this budget going to aid in the securing of these jobs?
Well, I think that what it does is it addresses the fiscal challenges in a way which I think will build on what the President really managed to achieve in the SONA. Which is to set the tone for a more positive attitude by investors, domestic and foreign. And I've seen that palpably even in one of the auto companies I went to visit the day after the SONA. And I think that all of that indicates that we are, I think, in a space in which the mood is more positive. If we can build on that with concrete programs, I think we can achieve a high level of investment. High level of investment turns into a high level of economic opportunity, and that translates into more jobs. That's what we need to do.
Minister, it's estimated that we lost about R1 trillion worth of investments in the 9 years of the Jacob Zuma presidency. That's just the estimates. My concern is that right now what we're seeing is a market that is putting its hope on the new South African authority at the top, a market that celebrated today's budget really as pragmatic. We saw the rand, if you will, gain a bit after the minister got onto the podium and started speaking. How do you make sure that we will seize this opportunity and not just speak about it as a wasted one like the past 9 years?
Well, I'm not sure that we lost R1 trillion of investments. I don't know where those figures come from. But in the past, let's say 2 or 3 years for sure, we had been performing suboptimally in terms of investment. What people were saying was that there was a low level of investor confidence. I think we knew that. Much as we were still working with investors and still getting investment to happen. But I think that what has changed now is that even it was palpably obvious in Davos, where people are beginning to see South Africa has been performing below potential, has been performing below its peers, and I think that they're beginning to say, well, there's opportunities here because now some of the issues that have kept us away are being addressed, and that on its own should give us a new opportunity, but it's not sufficient. We've actually got to make sure that our programs work better and that we concretely ensure that, for example, our incentives are deployed in a way that we get value for money, that our tools like localization are in place, that we run an efficient one-stop shop for investors, and that we address all the other issues in the economy to make this a more conducive environment.
Minister, you've doubted my facts, and which made me think about something which is very unaligned. Government comes out and the minister says we're expecting this year 1.5% growth. People I speak to, like Goldman Sachs, are expecting 2.5%. Investec is expecting 2%. Why aren't these numbers and growth expectations not aligned, or are you undershooting so you can over-deliver?
No, I think that the minister explained it in the budget. He said that the 1% plus is the floor. And quite often in the presentations the Treasury does, they say this is it. This is like the basic. If we put the SOCs right, then we had a certain amount. If we make sure that some of the industrial policy tools work better, we add to it. If we get the mining issues and certainty in the mining sector right, we add to it again. And then we start to get to some of the numbers that the others are giving us, and maybe some of those are already factoring those things in. But I think what we need to do is say to ourselves, there are things that have to happen in order to move the growth rate higher.
Minister, it's your responsibility as part of your department to really warn government of the threats or the opportunities posed by the fourth industrial revolution. This budget, how do you feel it addressed those challenges and those opportunities?
Well, I think the first point was, as I already said, that the investment in higher education and training is quite fundamental. If we don't do it, and we have a large number of people, young people in particular, who don't have skills, we're going to have an even worse unemployment problem, because I think all of the jobs that are going to be created now with the fourth industrial revolution are going to be for people who've got post-secondary education, literacy in ICT and stuff like that. So I think that's the first point. The second point I would say is that we need to understand that the adoption of digital technology is going to be an element of competitiveness. We need to embrace those technologies where they can provide creative developmental solutions, opportunities for entrepreneurship, and solve some of our problems like delivery of services. But at the same time, I think we need to be well aware that there's a potential to widen inequalities, to reshore industries back to countries with where there's high levels of consumption and stuff like that. And I think that there's a huge agenda there. We've got to grapple with this, and you know, I mean, we are working on this, I can say. We've got it's an aspect of our work on the Industrial Policy Action Plan, and we've got a number of proposals which we will be tabling in due course.
Minister, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.